thought I was saving a man on the run. I risked my job and safety to protect him. But when I saw the emptiness in his eyes and that twisted smile, I realized something terrifying. The real danger was not outside the door, it was already inside. I worked the night shift at a gas station. That night, rain poured from the sky like a broken dam. I started to feel uneasy and flipped the circuit breaker to cut the main power just in case. Only a small flashlight remained to light the room. Suddenly, I heard the door rattle. A soaked man stood outside, knocking and asking to come in and escape the storm. I hesitated. Something about him felt off, but he did not wait for my answer. He rushed in, snatched the flashlight, and held his trembling hands near its weak glow as if it were a campfire. I sighed. Maybe I was being paranoid. The storm was brutal, and he looked half frozen. I decided to let him stay, at least until the weather calmed. But in the back of my mind, something told me this night would not pass quietly. I quietly called the police to report the presence of a strange man at the station, but he overheard and whispered to me, "I am not a criminal. I am running from them." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing bruises and marks that looked like he had been tied up. His voice trembled as he said, "They are chasing me because I know the truth. If someone shows up asking about me, please do not hand me over." A few minutes later, a black car pulled up outside. 2 men in plain clothes stepped out and politely knocked on the door. One said, "We are with the Justice Department. We are looking for a dangerous escaped patient." I froze. The man was hiding in the supply room. His warning echoed in my head. I hesitated, then told the men I had not seen anyone. They left, suspicious but empty-handed. When I returned to the man, he was shaking and told me those men were not from any government agency. He said they were part of an organ trafficking ring, and he had evidence. I asked what to do. He told me if we reached the nearest police station, we would be safe. I let him rest in a small back room once used by a coworker who had already quit. It was the only private space available, and I thought it would help him calm down. I went to the front to grab some food and water, trying to process everything that had just happened. When I returned, something felt off immediately. He had taken off the wet outer layers of his clothes and was standing perfectly still, facing the wall. His back was stiff, rigid like a statue. I called his name softly, but he did not respond. The room was cold, yet beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. As I moved closer, I noticed dried blood along the sleeve of his shirt. It was not there earlier. Then he turned to face me. His eyes were no longer filled with fear. Instead, they were vacant, strangely thrilled. He smiled faintly. His lips were cracked and trembling, but that smile was steady. A strange unease crept over me. Something about him had shifted entirely. He asked me if I lived alone. Then, as if confirming something, he asked again, slower this time, "Are you here all by yourself?" A chill ran through my body. My instinct screamed at me that something was very wrong. I took a small step backward. My heart was racing, pounding against my ribs. I could barely breathe. The man standing in front of me no longer looked like someone in danger. He looked like the danger itself. I could not stay there another second. When he looked away to get some water, I quietly took the keys, tiptoed out of the room, and bolted for the front door. I left everything behind. My phone, my bag, even my jacket. I was ready to face any consequences. Losing my job, paying damages, having to explain everything to my company. None of that mattered anymore. I just wanted to survive. The rain had not stopped. Wind lashed against my face like tiny needles, but I kept running. Streetlights blurred through my tears. I ran for blocks until I reached the nearest police station. 2 officers were on duty. I shakily recounted everything: the man, the blood, his expression, the warnings. They listened closely and then took me back to the gas station. But when we arrived, it was completely empty. There was no sign of him. No bags, no blood, no evidence anyone had ever been there. The place was spotless, eerily undisturbed, except for one small folded note placed right in the center of the counter. I was not going to hurt you, but now you have given me a reason not to like you. See you soon. My blood turned to ice. My knees buckled. I could hardly stand. I did not sleep for days after that. I quit my job and left town. I deleted everything that could lead back to me. Social media accounts, old addresses, even old photos. I moved under a new name to a new place, far from that gas station and everything tied to it. But no matter how far I go, I still feel like I am being watched. Every time I hear footsteps behind me or see a shadow lingering too long, my heart races. I keep telling myself it is paranoia, but deep down, I know it is not. He is still out there, somewhere, and he remembers me. I do not know when or where, but I feel it in my bones. He is waiting for the right moment, because he was never just passing through. He was looking for someone, and now I am the one he has chosen. I squinted into the car ahead, honked to warn them they were on the wrong side of the road, but there was no one behind the wheel. Before I could react, the engine roared and the car sped straight toward me. My heart stopped. Something was terribly wrong. I work as a night guard at a mountainside hotel. That night, I finished my shift around 4 a.m. and headed home. Rain poured like a broken dam, and I chose a shortcut to save time. The road was a nightmare, muddy, uneven, filled with potholes and loose rocks. I usually avoided it, knowing it was known for being a hangout spot for vagrants and drug users. But I had made a promise to my daughter that I would be home before she woke up. That promise kept me going. I pushed through the rain and the rough terrain, gripping the wheel tighter every time the car jolted. Every mile felt longer than the last, but I kept telling myself that the smile on her face would be worth it. I just had to get through this one stretch of road, no matter how bad it got. The muddy road made driving nearly impossible. My tires spun and slipped, and every bump felt like it would snap the car in half. I was tired, wet, and anxious. I had promised my daughter I would be home before she woke up, and now I was sure I would be late. Just as I started to panic, the car jerked and stopped. No matter how hard I pressed the gas, it would not move. I stepped out into the rain, opened the trunk, and took out my emergency tools. But the night was too dark, the road too slick, and I struggled to see anything. Suddenly, headlights appeared. Another car was parked just ahead, facing me. Its lights shone directly on my vehicle, helping me see. I fixed the problem and stood up, relieved. I walked toward the other car, wanting to say thank you, but as I got closer, I realized something strange. The windshield was pitch black. I could not see anyone inside. I stepped closer, heart pounding, no driver, no movement, just silence and rain. Something felt wrong, very wrong. I took a few more cautious steps toward the strange car. My nerves were tight, but I needed to know who had helped me. As I got closer, the light from my own headlights reflected off the windshield of the other vehicle. In that brief moment, something became visible that froze me in place. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat. The figure did not move. The head was tilted unnaturally to the side, as if the neck had snapped. My breath caught in my throat. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking, and raised it to take a picture. Before I could capture anything, the headlights of the mysterious car suddenly shut off. In the pitch-black darkness, I heard the engine roar to life. A second later, the car lunged forward without warning, speeding directly toward me. I barely had time to react. I threw myself off the road, landing hard in the wet mud. My side ached, but I was alive. The car raced past the spot where I had stood just seconds before, its tires tearing through the puddle and sending water flying. I stared after it, heart pounding. This was no accident. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Panicked, I scrambled to my feet and climbed into my car. My fingers trembled as I shifted into reverse, trying to turn around as quickly as possible. As the rear lights came on, I caught a glimpse of the other car spinning around sharply. It began to follow me. No headlights, no horn, only the screech of its tires against the wet ground. I slammed the gas pedal and veered down a narrow side road, barely visible in the rain. The path led to an old iron bridge stretched over a shallow river. The road was slick, and my tires skidded as I crossed. Behind me, the strange car kept coming, staying only a few meters away. On the other side of the bridge, I saw a familiar sight through the fog and rain. A gas station. Relief surged through me, but as I got closer, I realized it was closed. The lights were off, the doors locked. In a desperate move, I reached into the glove compartment, grabbed the emergency flare, and tossed it behind me. I pressed the accelerator with everything I had, racing toward the other side of the bridge. Behind me, the flare exploded near the bridge's center. The structure groaned under the blast, then began to crack. I felt the vibration travel up through my tires. I did not stop. I just kept going. The moment I crossed, the bridge collapsed behind me. I glanced back in time to see the other car plunge into the river below, swallowed by the dark water. My hands were still shaking. My mind refused to believe what had just happened, but I was alive. I returned to the city with unsteady breath, still struggling to believe what I had just survived. I reported everything to the police. Based on my description, they eventually located a car drifting near the riverbank, but there was no body inside. Neither I nor the police could explain it. Who had adjusted the headlights of that vehicle? What had been chasing me through the storm? Was there something about that road none of us truly understood? No answers came, only more questions. The rain kept falling that night, as if it were trying to wash away something we were not meant to find. Since then, I have never taken the shortcut again, especially not in the rain. And whenever someone asks why I avoid that road, I simply say, some detours are not worth the risk. Some shortcuts lead to places you may never come back from. On the first rainy night I spent in my newly bought countryside home, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of a shovel digging into the earth downstairs. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the sound came again, steady and deliberate. Someone was down there. I am a writer who loves moving from place to place in search of inspiration. Recently, I settled into a quiet countryside home I had just purchased. It was an old house, but solid and surprisingly comfortable. Most importantly, it offered the peaceful solitude I had long desired. That night, a heavy storm rolled through the area, knocking out power across the neighborhood. I lit a few candles and sat down to read, enjoying the quiet despite the rain. But then I heard something, a soft scraping sound, like sand or gravel shifting. I told myself it was probably just the storm or my imagination playing tricks on me. But every 10 minutes or so, I heard it again. Eventually, the sound changed. It was clearer, heavier, more deliberate. It was the sound of a shovel digging, again and again, echoing from somewhere downstairs. I followed the sound downstairs, this time holding a flashlight tightly in my hand. The digging noise stopped the moment I touched the light switch. On the floor, a long trail of dirt stretched from the kitchen to where I stood, as if someone had dragged a heavy sack of soil inside. The backyard was empty, yet the back door stood wide open with no sign of forced entry. I turned on the exterior light. In the garden, a large patch of soil had been disturbed. A shovel lay abandoned beside an empty sack, both smeared with mud. I froze at the doorway, my breath shaky, the flashlight trembling in my grip. The soil looked freshly moved, but not as if it had just been dug up. It seemed someone had been burying something. I stepped outside slowly, my eyes fixed on the sack. When I crouched to inspect it, I found it empty, nothing but damp earth and a strange metallic scent. Suddenly, the wind slammed the back door shut behind me. I walked back inside with muddy hands, heading straight to the kitchen sink. As I scrubbed, the mud on my palms seemed endless. No matter how much water I used, the dirt refused to come off completely. Alarmed, I looked at the floor where the water was dripping and noticed something I had not seen before, a thin trail of soil running straight into the wooden floorboards. I knelt down, pressed my fingers to a loose plank, and lifted it. Beneath was a hidden basement I never knew existed. The previous owner had once mentioned an old storage room beneath a house, too dilapidated to be used. I had never questioned it until now. My heart pounded as I opened the basement door. A thick wave of mildew and rot surged upward. I descended the creaking steps slowly, every step echoing louder than the last. Then I heard it, a soft rustling sound, like something heavy being dragged across the dirt floor. I held my breath and swept my flashlight across the room. In one corner, a shallow hole had been dug, fresh earth scattered around it. My eyes landed on the far wall, where a message had been scrawled in wet, dripping mud. It read, "It was buried, but it keeps coming back." Above me, the wooden floorboards suddenly creaked, as if someone was walking across them. I froze, holding my breath. A few seconds passed in eerie silence, and then I heard the metallic clatter of the back door latch clicking into place. I rushed back upstairs. The door was now slightly ajar, and the backyard light was still dimly flickering. Through the curtain of rain, I saw a man standing at the edge of the garden, right where the earth had been disturbed. He wore a black raincoat, soaked through, and held a rotting wooden plank in his hands. It looked like it had been pulled from the basement. I screamed. He turned slowly. I recognized his face. I had seen it in the documents from the property sale. He was the previous owner, the man who had been declared missing 4 years ago. He looked terrifying, but his movements were frail. I managed to subdue him quickly and called the police. They arrived within minutes. He was in a state of panic and confusion. After hours of interrogation, he confessed. Years ago, during a violent argument, he had killed his younger brother in that very house. In fear, he buried the body beneath the basement floor and fled. But the guilt never left him. During every heavy rainstorm, he claimed to hear his brother's voice and see blood seeping from the cracks in the floorboards. That night, he returned to move the body, believing it would not rest in peace. The police unearthed the remains beneath the basement, along with blood-stained burlap and matching DNA evidence on an overhead beam. He was charged with murder and unlawful entry. That night, I looked out at the backyard one last time. The rain fell quietly, washing over the earth where everything had been uncovered. In the dim light, I saw it, a figure, smaller than a grown man, too thin to be anything else. It stood still in the middle of the yard, exactly where the body had been buried. I blinked. It was gone. Maybe it was exhaustion playing tricks on my eyes. Maybe it was the weight of everything I had just learned. But deep inside, I felt something I could not shake. Something was still there, watching, waiting. The truth may have come to light that night, but it did not feel like an ending. It felt like a door left slightly open, and I still wonder if that house ever truly let go of its secrets, or if it was only just beginning to whisper them.
I know I shouldn't have stopped at a rundown motel in the middle of the night, but my car was dying, and I didn't have another option. The main hotels were all booked, and the only thing with a vacancy sign was a flickering neon Pinewood Inn just off the highway. It looked abandoned from the outside, half its lights dead, the paint peeling off like old skin. But I was too tired to care. I just needed 4 walls and a bed. Nothing fancy. I didn't realise until later. I wasn't the only one staying in room 9 that night. The front office of the Pinewood Inn looked like a time capsule from the 70s. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust and stale coffee. Behind the desk sat a middle-aged woman with thinning hair and a cigarette dangling from her lips. She didn't look up until I cleared my throat. "Only got 1 room left," she muttered. "Room 9, end of the row." I asked if it was quiet. She paused, then said, "Sound travels in that room. If you hear anything strange, just ignore it." Her words stuck with me as I walked across the cracked pavement toward the room. The place was eerily silent. No other cars, no sign of life. Room 9 sat at the very end, tucked beneath a flickering security light that buzzed like a dying fly. The key was an old brass thing on a faded tag. When I pushed open the door, a sour smell hit me, something between mould and bleach. The carpet was stained, the mattress sagging, and the curtains half hung on their rod. But I was exhausted. I locked the door, threw my bag on the chair, and told myself I'd be gone by morning. I didn't expect to survive the night. I was half asleep when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, 3 knocks, then silence. It was coming from the wall behind the bed. I sat up and listened, heart rate picking up. Another knock, slightly louder this time. I tried to dismiss it, probably pipes, or the building settling. But then I heard something else. A whisper, low and breathy, like someone murmuring just behind the wall. I couldn't make out the words. I got up and checked the window. No cars outside. The rooms next door were empty. I was the only guest on this end of the motel. When I turned back toward the room, the television screen flickered on, even though I never touched the remote. It flashed static for a few seconds before cutting to black. My nerves were shot. I paced around the room, trying to ground myself. That's when I noticed a piece of paper jutting out from under the bed. I crouched and pulled it free. It was a scorched photograph, an older teenager or young adult, face pale and eyes hollow. The photo had deep scratch marks across the eyes and mouth. Something about it felt violently personal. I dropped it, and the knocking resumed. I jolted awake at 3:47 a.m. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I was suddenly sitting up, drenched in cold sweat. The room was freezing, even though I hadn't touched the thermostat. The air felt heavy, unnaturally still, like everything had paused just for me to notice. That's when I realized the blanket had been pulled off of me. At first, I thought maybe I kicked it off, but when I sat up to grab it, I saw something at the foot of the bed. A tall figure, completely still, looming over me. Before I could scream, it raised a finger to its lips. Shh. I froze. Not just in fear, my entire body locked up. I couldn't move my arms or legs, like I was pinned to the mattress. The figure leaned closer. I couldn't see its face, only the outline of something tall, bony and angular. It whispered, "Don't make a sound. I don't want to hurt you. Just tell me. Where's your wallet?" I choked out, "In my jeans. On the floor." The figure straightened, shuffled toward the corner where my jeans lay crumpled. I heard it rustling through my pockets, then the quiet zip of my wallet being opened. It asked, "What else is in here?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. A moment later, it said nothing more, just left. I heard the door creak open, then shut again. I lay there for several minutes, heart pounding, afraid to even move. When I finally forced myself up, I ran to the door. The lock was still jammed, but the chain had been snapped clean off. That thing didn't break in. It had already been inside. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner of the room, knees to my chest, eyes locked on the door, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Every creak of the old building sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of my neck. I kept telling myself I had imagined it, but the empty wallet on the floor said otherwise. At first light, I grabbed my stuff and practically sprinted out of room 9. I didn't even bother to check out properly. I just tossed the keys through the slot in the locked front office door and ran to my car. But before I could leave, I stopped at the gas station near the highway to fill up. I looked like hell, sweaty, pale, eyes bloodshot. The clerk, a woman maybe in her 40s, glanced at me and said, "You staying at the Pinewood?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Room 9, I muttered. Her face went blank, then she leaned in and whispered, "That place shut down last year. They found someone dead in the wall. Maintenance guy noticed the smell. Turns out it was a drifter who tried to hide in the crawl space. Got stuck. Took days for them to even realize." I told her that couldn't be right. I had checked in, gotten a key, spoke to the woman at the desk. She shook her head slowly. "There's no woman. The front office has been boarded up since the fire." My hands started to shake. I looked down at my palm, still holding that old heavy motel key. I hadn't left it behind. Somewhere between room 9 and my car, it came back with me. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't call the police. I didn't want to know anything more. I drove straight home and threw the key into a river on the way, hoping that would be enough. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep in silence. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. I kept the lights on. I taped the door shut at night. And even then, sometimes I'd wake up to find my blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed, like someone had been there again, watching, waiting. I never figured out what really happened in room 9. I don't care to. But if you're ever on a lonely road and you see a cheap motel that looks like it's barely standing, keep driving, no matter how tired you are. Some places aren't abandoned because they're empty. They're abandoned because something never left. The snowstorm came out of nowhere. I was driving back to Chicago after my grandmother's funeral when the highway shut down completely. Zero visibility. Every exit blocked. The only option I had was an old roadside motel called Mid-Pines Motor Lodge, just barely visible through the whiteout. It looked deserted, like no one had stayed there in years. But the neon vacancy sign was on, flickering in red. I told myself it was just one night. A warm bed, a locked door, then gone by morning. I didn't realize. I'd just checked into a room built without mirrors for a reason. The lobby of Mid-Pines Motor Lodge was strangely quiet. The floor creaked beneath my boots, and the air smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. Behind the counter sat an elderly man with paper-thin skin and watery eyes. He didn't say much, just handed me a brass room key labelled 12 and mumbled, "You're the only one here tonight." As I glanced around, something felt off. There were no mirrors anywhere. Not behind the counter, not near the vending machines, not even in the little restroom off to the side. "You guys don't have mirrors?" I asked, half joking. The old man didn't laugh. He just looked up and said, "We got rid of them. Stopped showing what they were supposed to." I brushed it off, assuming it was some weird local humour. I took the key and trudged through the snow to room 12, the last one at the far end of the building. Inside, the room was basic. Queen bed, nightstand, old TV, bathroom to the right. But what caught my eye immediately was a long curtain covering something on the wall across from the bed. I had a sinking feeling I already knew what it was hiding. I tried to ignore the curtain at first, but curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it aside and found exactly what I suspected. A mirror. Large, rectangular, and cracked straight down the center. Someone had attempted to fix it with strips of black duct tape, but the glass still shimmered unevenly, like water disturbed. The moment I looked into it, something felt wrong. My reflection was there, but it wasn't quite right. My movements were just a touch delayed, like a badly synced video feed. I leaned in. So did it, but it moved smoother than I did. Too smooth. Uneasy, I covered the mirror again and tried to go about my night, but the air felt heavier now, like something else had entered the room. Around midnight, I started hearing a faint tapping. It wasn't from the door or window. It was coming from behind the curtain. Then I heard a whisper, almost like my own voice, but tired, hollow, drained. "Let me take your place, just for a while." I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The mirror had gone quiet again, but I could feel it. Something on the other side was watching and waiting. I woke up suddenly, heart pounding, with no idea why. The room was dark, pitch black, not even the standby light from the TV. I reached for the lamp, but it wouldn't turn on. Nothing worked. It felt like the power had been cut, or worse, like time had stopped. That's when I noticed it. The curtain had been pulled aside again. The mirror was fully exposed. I knew I'd covered it. But now, it wasn't cracked. The tape was gone. The glass looked flawless, polished, perfect. Too perfect. I sat up slowly, staring at my reflection. It stared back, but didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't twitch. Then it smiled. I didn't. I stood, and it stayed seated. Then, as if relaxing after a long wait, my reflection stood up slowly, its movements just a bit too fluid, too graceful. It raised one hand to the glass and pressed against it. The surface rippled like water. "You're tired," it said in my voice softly. "I can live for you. Just sleep." I backed away, legs trembling. It stepped forward inside the mirror, pushing harder. Fingers began to emerge, long, greyish, almost rubbery. In panic, I grabbed the metal trash can and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered, exploding in a rain of sharp fragments. The figure vanished in an instant, swallowed back into the shards. But the smile, I still saw it. Not in the mirror anymore, just scattered, etched into the broken pieces on the floor, like it had burned itself into the glass. I couldn't stay there another second. Something in that mirror hadn't just been watching me. It was ready to take my place. I threw everything I had into my duffel bag, not caring if I left anything behind. I just needed to get out. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it. I left the room without turning back, crunching over the broken glass with every step. The hallway outside felt colder now, like the heat had been sucked out of the building completely. I ran straight to the front office to tell the old man what happened. Maybe get help, maybe just scream at someone who'd understand. But when I got there, the door was open and the room inside was completely empty. No desk, no lamp, no chairs, just a single mirror on the far wall, shattered just like the one in my room. That's when the truth hit me. There had never been anyone at the front desk. I don't know who or what gave me the key. I sprinted to my car and peeled out of the parking lot without looking back. I didn't stop until I had cell service again. I called my cousin, rambling, barely making sense. When I mentioned the motel name, he cut me off. Mid-Pines, that place burned down 5 years ago. Total loss. There's nothing left. I slammed the brakes, pulled out the room key still in my pocket. Room 12. Same logo. Cold to the touch. I looked in the rearview mirror. For a moment, just a second, my reflection blinked a little too late. It stared back with a calm, knowing smile. And this time, I wasn't sure if I was the one sitting behind the wheel, or if something else had made it out of the mirror instead of me. I don't stay in motels anymore. Hell, I barely sleep in rooms with mirrors. Something about them just feels wrong now. Like I'm not always the only one looking back. After that night, I smashed every mirror in my apartment. People said I was paranoid. Maybe. But sometimes when I catch a glimpse of myself in a window or the screen of my phone, I swear my reflection holds the stare a little longer than I do. So here's my advice. If you ever check into a room and notice there's no mirror, don't go looking for one. If you find a mirror that's been covered up, leave it that way. And if your reflection ever moves out of sync, even for a second, run. Because once something gets out of that glass, it doesn't just want to look like you, it wants to replace you. I work night shifts at a small roadside motel in rural Oregon. Nothing fancy, just a front desk, 10 rooms and the occasional stranded traveller looking for a bed. It's a quiet job most nights. But there's always been one rule I was told on my first day. Never rent out room 3. No explanation. Just a thick red line drawn through it in the booking ledger and a paper sign taped to the door that reads, "Out of service." I followed that rule for over a year, until one stormy night, when a man came in begging for that exact room. It was just past 11 p.m. when he walked in, soaked from the rain, no luggage, hood up, eyes darting toward the hallway behind me. The storm outside had knocked out half the power, and the place was barely lit. He looked like he'd been running. "Just need a room," he said quickly, voice low, facing the lot. Preferably room 3. That made me pause. "I'm sorry, room 3 is out of service," I replied, like I always had. But the guy leaned in, urgent. "I need that room. I need the door facing the road, no neighbours. Please." He was shaking, either from the cold or something else. Against my better judgment and breaking the one rule I was told never to break, I gave him the key. He grabbed it without another word, walked straight down the hallway, and disappeared into the darkness. A strange feeling settled in my chest the moment the door shut behind him. Not guilt, unease. I stared at the monitor showing the hallway cam. The feed flickered, then went black. Room 3 had never had issues with that camera before, and something told me this wasn't a simple case of a guy needing shelter. About an hour later, I was sipping stale coffee and flipping through the motel logbook when I noticed the hallway camera for room 3 was still out, just a black screen with faint static. I tried resetting the system twice, but the feed wouldn't come back. The rest of the cameras were fine. Just that one. Out of curiosity, I pulled up the recorded footage from earlier when the man entered. The video showed him walking down the hallway alone, slow and stiff. But the audio, that's what got me. There were 2 voices, his and someone else's. Faint but distinct, like he was talking to someone just out of frame. The second voice was low, whispery, like it was right behind him, murmuring things I couldn't quite make out. I paused the footage. My heart was pounding. The camera only showed one person entering, but there was definitely something, or someone, else with him. Then I heard it. A thud, followed by a dragging noise. From the hallway, from room 3. I stood up, every instinct screaming not to go. But I walked to the door and leaned out, listening. The light above room 3 flickered once, and then I heard it, breathing, right behind the door. I approached the door to room 3 slowly, the carpet muffling my footsteps. The breathing on the other side was steady, but wrong. Too slow, too deep. It wasn't the man I'd checked in. It sounded heavier, like something with lungs too big for a human chest. I raised my hand to knock, then froze when I saw something move under the door. A shadow. Not feet, fingers, long and splayed, creeping slowly into view, like someone or something was lying flat on the floor inside, pressed up against the door. I backed away, fast. Back at the front desk, I watched the blacked-out feed, hoping for anything, even static. But then, for just a moment, the screen flickered to life. It showed room 3's door wide open, and the man standing outside of it, facing the hallway wall, perfectly still. His arms hung limp, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening. Then the screen glitched again, this time showing him standing inside the room, facing the mirror, alone. I rewound the tape 3 times. Both versions were there, like 2 separate recordings overlapped, showing 2 different realities. One where he was still outside, one where he was already inside, and yet he had never walked back out. That was when I noticed something else. In the mirrored footage, the man's reflection wasn't matching him. It smiled. He didn't. And the reflection, it started moving toward the door, leaving him behind. That's when the hallway light above room 3 exploded with a pop, and the camera went black again. I don't know what I let into that room, but I knew something else came out. By 4 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know if the man was still in there, if he was okay, if anything was left of him at all. I grabbed the master key and made my way down the hall, flashlight shaking in my hand. The air grew colder with every step toward room 3. The carpet felt damp. The lights above barely glowed now, like the electricity was being drained. When I reached the door, it was slightly ajar. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. From the gap, I could see inside. The room was empty, bed untouched. No bags, no clothes, no sign anyone had ever been there. Except one thing, a wet footprint on the tile facing the mirror. I stepped back, shut the door without a word, and locked it. When I returned to the front desk, I checked the logbook. The entry for room 3 was gone, like it had erased itself. The key for room 3 was back on the hook. Still damp, I pulled up the security footage again. This time, there was nothing. Just the hallway, no man, no door opening, nothing at all. It was like that entire night had been cut out of reality. Except for me. I was still here. I remembered. And every night since, around the same time, 3:17 a.m, the light above room 3 flickers, and I swear I hear footsteps pacing behind the door. I haven't opened it since, and I never will. I still work here. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Room 3 has stayed locked since that night. I changed the locks, nailed the door shut, even covered the peephole. But every now and then, I still hear breathing on the other side. And sometimes, when I'm the only one in the building, I'll catch a glimpse of a shadow slipping past the end of the hallway. So here's my advice. If you ever work the night shift at a motel, if there's a room that's always marked out of service, don't ask questions. If the booking ledger skips a number, let it. And if someone ever begs you for a room the motel supposedly doesn't use, say no. Because once something steps into that space, it might not be the one that walks back out, and neither will you. I live on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex. No pool nearby, no open water. But every single night, At exactly 2:13 a.m. I hear it. Plop, 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 the soft rhythmic sound of water being slapped just beneath my feet. I used to think it was the pipes, maybe rats, maybe my neighbours, until I realised no one lives below me. The unit directly underneath has been vacant for months. I've checked. I even asked the landlord. Still, the sound never stops. I used to work night security at a pool, and I think something followed me home. I used to work as a night security guard at a high-end apartment complex just outside the city. Not a dangerous job, not exciting either. Just routine walkthroughs, camera checks, and the occasional noise complaint. The only thing that ever really stood out was the pool. It was massive, perfectly clean, eerily still at night, and open to residents until 10 p.m. sharp. After that, no one was allowed in. Most nights were uneventful. I'd do my first sweep around 9:45, make sure everyone had cleared out, lock the gate and spend the rest of my shift watching cameras in the security room. But one night I was running a little behind. I didn't get to the pool until almost 10:15. As I walked up the path leading to the gate, I heard it. This strange, rhythmic sound. Plop, plop, plop. Like someone gently slapping the water, over and over. It wasn't the sound of swimming or splashing, just tapping. I called out, expecting to see some drunk tenant still in the water. Nothing. I turned on the floodlights. The pool was empty, still. No movement, no ripples, no one in sight. But the sound didn't stop. It kept going, even when I was alone. The next night, I made sure to get to the pool early, before 10, before the sound could start. Everything seemed normal. I cleared out the last couple lounging by the chairs, locked the gate, and went back to the office. For a while, it was quiet. But right around 2 a.m., the noise started again. Plop, plop. Slow, measured like someone playing with water. I stared at the monitors. The pool was empty. No movement, just dark, rippling water under the dim security lights. But the audio feed, the mic above the gate, it picked it up. The same rhythmic tapping. I turned up the volume and my skin crawled. It sounded closer. The third night, I brought a flashlight and went out there myself. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I saw it. A patch of dark hair floating in the center of the pool. No head, no face, just hair, long and black, gently bobbing like someone submerged just beneath the surface. Then, without a ripple, it sank. Not like it drifted or was pulled by a current. It was dragged down. The next day, I checked the camera footage again. Nothing appeared. No hair, no sound. But I know what I saw. And I wasn't imagining it. I couldn't let it go. I wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating right. Every night I dreaded 2:13 a.m. It always came. And with it, that plop, plop sound, I started digging into the building's incident reports. Nothing official about the pool. But after talking to one of the older maintenance guys, I learned something that chilled me to the bone. 3 years ago, a young woman drowned in that very pool. It wasn't in any public record. Apparently, the family threatened a lawsuit and demanded discretion. The woman had wandered out late at night during a family party, and no one noticed she was missing until it was too late. The guard on shift that night had stepped away. No one ever saw how she fell in. I found an old photo, grainy and water-damaged. The woman had long black hair, just like what I saw in the water. That night, I brought a UV flashlight, hoping maybe I could catch something the cameras couldn't. I waited at the edge of the pool, barely breathing. At exactly 2:13, the water started to ripple. Then came the hair. But this time, a face followed it. Pale, featureless, like a waterlogged mask. Eyes wide open, staring straight at me. I stumbled back, dropped the flashlight. When I picked it up, she was gone, but the water was still dripping from the tiles beside me, like something had just climbed out. I ran. I didn't even clock out. I left everything behind. I quit the next day. But the sound, that plop, plop, never left. It followed me home, and now every night at 2:13 a.m. I hear it from my own bathroom. And last night, I found a long strand of wet black hair on the edge of the tub. I told myself it was stress, residual paranoia from working too many night shifts, that maybe I brought the fear with me, not the ghost. But deep down, I knew better. Every night at 2:13 I heard it, even after I moved, even after I changed cities. It was always the same, plop, plop, from the bathroom. I stopped using the tub, taped over the drain, slept with a towel shoved under the door. But still, the sound came, louder, closer. I tried to ignore it. But last night, something changed. I woke up soaking wet. The sheets, my clothes, even my hair, dripping. My phone ruined. I hadn't sleepwalked. The doors were locked. But the bathroom light was on. I approached the door, heart pounding. The sound wasn't just slapping water anymore. It was breathing. Shallow, raspy, like someone who had spent too long underwater. I cracked the door open. The tub was full, but not with water, with long black hair, floating, swirling. Then slowly, like something rising from the deep, her face emerged, bloated, pale, lips split from swelling, eyes milky and unblinking. She opened her mouth and water poured out, black and thick like oil. It spilled over the edge. Reached my feet, I slammed the door and ran. I didn't sleep, I didn't shower, I left everything behind again. But no matter where I go, I hear it, that cursed rhythm, that slow, wet plop, plop, from places it should never be. She isn't tied to the pool. She isn't tied to a place. She's tied to me. And now, I think she's ready to pull me under. I'm writing this as a warning, though I doubt it'll do much good. If you hear water where there shouldn't be any, if you ever wake up soaked, if you find hair that isn't yours drifting in the drain, don't ignore it. She doesn't want to scare you. She doesn't want you to run. She wants you to take her place. I think she was just a lonely young woman when she died. But now, whatever's left of her isn't human anymore. It waits in silence. It remembers. And it follows. Tonight, I'll try to stay awake. But I know she's coming. The lights are flickering. The floor is wet again. The drain's gurgling like it's gasping for breath. I hear her behind the door. Plop, plop. Please, never stay alone near still water after midnight. Some reflections aren't yours, and some drownings never really end. I used to think swimming pools were the safest place to unwind. Open space, clear water, nothing to hide. But that changed when I moved into a luxury apartment complex with a rooftop pool. From my very first swim, I noticed him, an older man sitting behind the dark glass of the maintenance room, always watching. Morning, evening, rain or shine. He never moved, never spoke, just stared. I thought he was staff, until I walked around back one day and found the maintenance room empty. No lights, no equipment, just a mirror-like window facing the pool. A one-way mirror. And me. I moved into the skyrise apartments last summer, one of those glass and steel luxury buildings with a rooftop pool, gym, and 24/7 security. The pool was their big selling point. It sat on the 25th floor, surrounded by sleek lounge chairs, LED lights under the water, soft music playing through hidden speakers. It felt like a resort, elevated, pristine, detached from the real world. I made it a habit to swim every evening after work. It helped me unwind, clear my head. But after a few nights, I noticed something strange. Across the pool, behind a large panel of dark tinted glass labelled maintenance, there was always a man sitting in a chair, always the same posture, arms on the armrests, eyes fixed directly on the water. At first I figured he was just part of the staff, maybe a bored technician keeping an eye on the filtration system. But then I realised he never moved. Not once. I'd be in the pool for 20 minutes and he'd sit perfectly still the entire time, like a statue. No blinking, no nodding, just watching. And the weirdest part, it didn't matter what time I came. Morning, night, late afternoon, he was always there, always watching. Curiosity got the better of me. One afternoon, I finished my swim early and decided to walk around the perimeter of the rooftop to see where that maintenance room led. I expected to find a locked utility door, maybe a small office, but there was nothing. Just a blank concrete wall. No signage, no door, no window. From the outside, it was like the room didn't exist. Back at the pool the next day, he was there again. Same posture, same dead stare through the glass. I tried waving once, subtle at first, then more obvious. No response, not even a twitch. I asked the front desk staff casually, "Hey, who's the guy in the maintenance booth?" The girl looked confused. "Maintenance booth? There's no one stationed up there," she said. "Just automated systems." That night, I swam later than usual. Around 10:30 p.m, I surfaced mid-lap and looked toward the glass. Empty. No one in the chair. I almost laughed. Maybe I imagined it all. But then, as I climbed out, I glanced back once more and saw him again, closer to the glass than ever before, standing. His face just inches from the pane, still watching. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, not just eerie, but fundamentally off. Over the next few days, I stopped swimming. I watched from the lounge chairs instead, sunglasses on, pretending to read while keeping one eye on the glass. He was always there, always staring. But I started noticing something new. My apartment, 3 floors below the rooftop, began to feel invaded. After every shower, I'd find condensation on the mirror, even though I'd left the bathroom window open. I kept discovering faint, wet footprints leading from my hallway to the living room. Once I even found a single strand of hair on my pillow, long and grey. No one else had access to my unit. One night, I decided to record my swim with a waterproof camera hidden in my goggles. I swam as usual, trying not to act suspicious, making sure the lens captured the maintenance booth. When I got home and reviewed the footage, my blood ran cold. At the 15-minute mark, the man behind the glass leaned forward, but not just toward the window. His face pressed against it, distorting, flattening like soft flesh against cold glass. Then his hand appeared. From inside the pool wall, reaching out through the tiles just inches behind my head. I paused the video, rewound, played again. The hand was inside the pool, not a reflection, not a trick of light. Something had been in there with me. I didn't sleep that night. I packed my bags and checked into a motel. But even now, when I shower, I swear I see shapes moving behind the fogged mirror. And the next morning, there were wet footprints on the motel floor. I called the building management anonymously and reported suspicious activity in the pool's maintenance area. They brushed it off. "It's just tinted glass. There's no one inside," the man on the line said. "That section's sealed off. It's not even used anymore." Sealed off? Then who the hell had been watching me all this time? I couldn't let it go. I returned to the building one last time, early in the morning before sunrise. I snuck up to the rooftop pool with a flashlight and my phone. The place was empty. No music, no lights. Just silence and the surface of the water, dark and glassy. I approached the maintenance glass slowly. From this close, I could see the faint outline of the chair behind it. Empty. My reflection stared back at me, until it didn't. The reflection blinked. I froze. The reflection slowly tilted its head, even though I hadn't moved. Its eyes narrowed, lips curling into the faintest smile. Then I heard the wet slap of footsteps behind me. I turned, heart hammering in my chest, but saw only the pool, still and dark. I spun back around, and the glass was clear. On the other side stood the man. Not on a chair, not in shadow. Up close, watching, smiling. One hand pressed flat to the glass. His skin looked slick, waterlogged, swollen. A sudden crack spiderwebbed across the pane. I ran, down flights of stairs, out of the building. I didn't stop until I reached a public road, panting like I'd escaped a nightmare. But I hadn't. Because now, wherever I go, every pool, every mirror, every dark window, there's always a reflection that moves a beat too late, and someone's still watching me from the other side. I've moved 3 times since then. Different cities, no pools, no mirrors in the bedroom, but it doesn't matter. Because he's not tied to the place. He's tied to me. Every reflective surface feels off now. Mirrors that seem deeper than they should. Windows that darken when I walk by. Sometimes I see water droplets where there shouldn't be any. Sometimes I wake up wet. I've stopped trying to explain. Who would believe me? So here's my advice. If you're ever swimming and feel like you're being watched, leave. If the window looks too dark, if the glass doesn't reflect right, if the air smells faintly of chlorine when it shouldn't, run. Because someone or something might be on the other side, not looking at your reflection, looking at you, and once it finds you, it never stops watching. My roommate disappeared after a mandatory night swim class. No goodbye, no warning, just gone. The school claimed she transferred for personal reasons, but her books were still on the desk, her toothbrush still in the cup. Only her bed was stripped, like someone tried to erase her. No one talked about her after that. Not the teachers, not the students. It was like she never existed. But I know what I saw that night, the way she begged not to go near the water, and I know what I heard later beneath the surface. Something's still down there, waiting. I spent 2 years at a prestigious all-girls boarding school tucked in the mountains. Fancy uniforms, ivy-covered buildings, and rules so strict they felt almost ritualistic. Everything had to be perfect. Posture, performance, appearance. Even the pool was immaculate, indoor, heated, lined with white tiles that seemed to glow under the lights. We were told it was a privilege, a symbol of our school's excellence. My roommate Lena hated it. She was quiet, kind, and absolutely terrified of water. She told me she nearly drowned when she was 8. The pool gave her full-body shivers. She avoided it whenever she could, always inventing excuses to skip swim class. One Friday evening, just before lights out, our gym teacher announced a mandatory night swim session for all second-year girls. Lena turned pale. She pleaded with the teacher, begged not to go. They didn't listen. I waited up for her that night. Midnight passed. Then 2 a.m. Her bed stayed empty. The next morning, the school said she'd left early due to family issues. But her things were still in our room. Books, uniform, phone. Only her bed was stripped bare, and no one ever mentioned her name again. Something wasn't right. Lena didn't have family. Her parents died in an accident, and she'd been in the care of the school ever since. There was no one to pick her up. No goodbye note, no suitcase. Just silence. When I asked our dorm matron, she smiled too quickly and said, "Some students don't adjust well." That was it. But the girls in our year avoided the topic entirely. Even my closest friend changed the subject whenever I brought Lena up. It was like everyone had collectively agreed to forget she ever existed. Then I met Phoebe, an older student who'd always kept to herself. One afternoon, as I left the library, she slipped a note into my hand. No words, just a time and place. Pool, 9:15 p.m. That night, I waited in the shadows near the locker room. At exactly 9:15, the pool lights flickered on. 5 girls in white uniforms stepped into the water in a circle. In the center stood a woman in a black cloak, face hidden behind a silver mask. They began to chant, low, rhythmic and chilling. Then one of them pulled out a ragged, red-stained doll. They dropped it into the water. It sank, and that's when they all looked directly at me. I froze. For a full second, I didn't breathe. Their heads were still, unnaturally still, but all 5 girls in the pool, and the masked woman in the center, were staring in my direction. Not vaguely, directly. Their faces didn't show surprise or fear, just awareness, as if they'd expected me. I bolted, slipped on wet tiles, cracked my elbow, scrambled barefoot out of the locker room and back through the dorm hallway. I didn't stop until I was behind a locked door, heart hammering, lungs burning. I stayed up all night, waiting for a knock that never came. The next morning, I checked the pool. Closed. Maintenance issue, the sign read. Phoebe was gone. Her room cleared out. When I asked around, people just gave me blank looks, like they'd never heard the name. I knew better. I started noticing things. Subtle at first. A faint chemical scent, chlorine in my closet. Damp footprints near the foot of my bed that weren't mine. Whispers in the vents late at night, repeating the same phrase in a language I didn't recognize. Then I found something under Lena's mattress. A torn page from an old handbook. It listed special curriculum, aquatic ceremony, level 2. It wasn't part of any schedule I knew. Underneath it, scrawled in Lena's handwriting, they choose one every year. I knew then that Lena hadn't left. She'd been taken. And I was never supposed to know. But now I did. I tried to tell a teacher. She looked at me with a hollow smile and said, "You're tired. Maybe it's time for a rest." They put me on medical leave a day later. But before I left campus, I snuck back to the pool one last time. The doll was floating on the surface, soaked, torn, smiling, and beneath the water, a shape waited, still, silent, watching. I didn't sleep after that. Even off campus, miles away at my aunt's house, I could still feel it, that presence. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the pool, the doll, the silver mask, and that shape beneath the surface, just floating, waiting. I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare, a trauma response, but the fear wouldn't fade. I started locking the bathroom door whenever I showered, avoided mirrors after dark, and still I sometimes woke up to damp sheets. Once I found a hair, long, black, wet, stuck to my pillow. Then, late one night, I got a text from an unknown number. She never left. I didn't reply. I didn't sleep. A few days later, I saw a post online. Another girl from my former school, missing, different year, same dorm, no witnesses. The school's response: family emergency. I clicked on the article. In the photo attached, the reporter had captured a sliver of the pool in the background. I zoomed in. The water was calm, peaceful. But I saw it. Just under the surface, hair, dark, flowing, like someone hovering inches below, waiting to rise. I stared at that image for hours, because I knew what it meant. They were still doing it, and next time, they wouldn't let anyone escape. I've never spoken to anyone about this, until now. Not because I'm afraid they won't believe me, but because I'm afraid someone will. If you're reading this and you attend that school, don't go to night swim. Don't follow notes. Don't trust the schedule. And if you've already seen the silver mask, if you've heard the chanting in the vents, or found your sheets damp without reason, leave. Immediately. Don't wait for answers. Don't confront anyone. Just go. Because once they notice you, there's no going back. They choose one every year. That's not superstition. That's tradition. And the ones who disappear, they don't transfer. They don't run away. They stay down there, beneath the surface. Still watching, still waiting.